Yo guys, what's going on? I'm Tim Kelly. This is The Real Sports Talk. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm continuing my top 32 quarterbacks for 2013 countdown, saving you guys from Ron Jaworski for those of you who've seen the countdown and disagreed. I think that this is more your voice, the voice of reason, whatever you want to call it, because I think a lot more people are going to agree with my list than Ron Jaworski. So far, at number 32, I had Nick Foles of the Philadelphia Eagles. 31 went to Chad Henne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. 30 went to Christian Ponder of the Minnesota Vikings. 29 went to Kevin Kolb of the Buffalo Bills. 28 went to Matt Flynn of the Oakland Raiders. And 27 is going to go to Mark Sanchez of the New York Jets. And he's not at 32, let's put it that way, but him being back in New York for another season is an absolute disaster. The fact that, and I don't think he's the worst quarterback in the NFL, but with everything that happened last year, it was the strangest season. The entire year he was looking over his shoulder, waiting for Tebow to kind of get a start over him or whatever. It never happened. And then towards the end of the season, you start Greg McElroy, a quarterback from Alabama who has no NFL future except being a backup. You start him over Mark Sanchez, and then you bring Mark Sanchez back this year pretty much because you owe him too much money to release him. The Jets are a team that is not going to the playoffs this year. They're probably not going to the playoffs for a few years now. They need to rebuild and retool this roster. So to me, you take the cap hit, you do whatever you have to do, and you release Mark Sanchez. You allow him to start over somewhere else. And I think that for him, had he gotten released or traded prior to last year, he might have been able to figure things out somewhere else as a starting quarterback. Maybe not elite, but figure things out. I think that we all saw the potential in him at USC. The problem was he left a year early. He had a great Rose Bowl against my Penn State Nittany Lions. He left a year early. Pete Carroll said at the time that was not a smart move and got bashed for it. But I think that I agreed at the time, and I think we all agree now, that Mark Sanchez certainly could have used a little more seasoning. He's a nice guy, I'll give him that, but the stats last year indicate the fact that his NFL career has really been a disaster so far. 13 touchdowns, 18 interceptions, under 3,000 yards. He's one of Christian Ponder's the only quarterback who played 16 games last year that did not have 3,000 yards. Mark Sanchez would have been right on the borderline had he played one more game. He played 15 last year, 66.9 passer rating, and as I mentioned, bench for Greg McElroy late in the season. So it sounds like, according to Nason, or however you say it, the Boston NESN website, news thing, whatever, it sounds like he's going to be the starter. They reported today that he has a firm grip on the starting position because Geno Smith struggled in off-season workouts. And I think Geno Smith is a guy that we saw him fall to the second round because teams realized that if he's going to be a franchise quarterback, it's not going to be right away. He's not going to step in and be that RG3, Russell Wilson, Andrew Luck, who takes your team to the playoffs in the first year. So Mark Sanchez is going to get time. And he has some better weapons this year, I'll give him that, although I'm not sure how much better. Chris Ivory is going to be his running back, who they acquired from the New Orleans Saints. Chris Ivory averaged 5.1 yards per carry in his career. In his rookie season, ran for over 700 yards. We'll see what he does, getting the first chance in his career to really be a feature back in a team that's probably going to run the ball more than they throw the ball. His wide receiving core has not gotten any better. The top two receivers, Santonio Holmes has a foot injury, not sure if he'll be ready for the preseason, and then Stephen Hill's also hurt. And then you look at your tight end situation, Jeff Cumberland, who caught I think he had 400 receiving yards last year, and then you look at Kellen Winslow Jr., who, with the exception of a year or two in Cleveland, really has never done much in the NFL. So I don't like what he has around him. And I just think it's a disaster. I think he can settle in at some point to being a backup quarterback somewhere else. But I think these last 2 years have just been so emotionally draining on Mark Sanchez that to expect him to really do a whole lot better than he did last year, it's not reasonable. I think it is a very realistic possibility that we could see Greg McElroy Mark Sanchez get benched and Greg McElroy ends up starting because they don't feel Geno Smith's ready. But that Mark Sanchez, it was such a disaster last year. The butt fumble will always be what we think about with Mark Sanchez. And I just think bringing him back is going to be a continuation of that disaster. I know that he came back reportedly a little stronger, everything, but it's the same situation with Rex Ryan, whose defense is not nearly what it was early on. And people will lead you to think that, well, at least the first 2 years of his career, Mark Sanchez was actually really good because they went to the AFC title game, and they couldn't be more wrong. He wasn't horrendous for a rookie quarterback. He threw more interceptions than touchdowns. At the same time, so did Peyton Manning in his rookie year. But the first 2 years when they went to those AFC title games, they didn't go there because of Mark Sanchez. He made some big throws, I'll give him that, especially in that Patriots game in the divisional round. But for the most part, they were going there the first year because of Thomas Jones, who had a tremendous year. They never should have brought LT in there over him. Sean Green then comes in. So they had a really good running game. And then they also had a really good defense at the time. You got Darrelle Revis, who is now gone. Best player on the team, best defensive player in the NFL, in my opinion, gone. Your defense is going to be a mess. You had Bart Scott in his prime, the end of his prime, when he first came to the Jets, but he was very good back then. And that defense is just depleted. This Jets team as a whole is depleted, and there's so much pressure on Mark Sanchez there. Everyone is just expecting him to fail. So I feel bad for the guy. I don't think he's the worst quarterback in the NFL, but I think we're going to have him have a season where it may very well look like that again, like it did last year. So Mark Sanchez comes in at 27 on my top 32 quarterbacks for 2013. I'll catch you guys next time.